tonight we're going to hear about the Full of Beans campaign by Dr. Emily May Armstrong and the Food System Resilience Project by Dr. Ifeyinwa Kanu. So very excited to hear what they've got to say, mostly because they are trailblazing projects from the first round of funding for SCAF. So it's exciting for us to hear what happened during those projects. Laura, do you want to go to the next slide? So this is myself. I'm chairing tonight. I'm Professor Emily Combe. I'm a professor of human nutrition at the University of Glasgow, and I'm the director for SCAF. And our two presenters are going to probably say a few words about themselves, where they come from, and where they fit in the whole food system landscape. But it's also an opportunity for you to introduce yourself in the chat. There might be connections in the room that you would like to make, people you haven't seen for a long time. So please go ahead and add who you are in the chat, maybe why you're here and your connection to the topic. So this is a very brief statement of this about the Scottish Alliance for Food, and it's a fairly new initiative that started in 2023, funded by the Scottish Funding Council, and it really aims to bring together a broad range of perspectives from social, natural, formal, applied sciences, from all sorts of disciplines to really explore the complexity of food system and bring together people who are producing food, scientists, researchers, and also the people of Scotland who are not necessarily working in food but are interested in the topic of food as a societal grand challenge. And what we want to do is to bring those people together to foster collaborations, but also new thinking about the critical emerging question linking food and societal outcome. And we've got a specific interest in the topics of health, sustainability, and equity that we're trying to explore with and through SCAF. We've got an overview of what SCAF actually does. We do not do research ourselves, but we organize our thinking and our activities around 4 key themes. The first one is mapping. Second one is innovation in food. The third one is culture, and the fourth one is security. And we also have 2 work streams. One is on food systems, and the other one is a new initiative called the Academy of Citizens that our colleagues Cindy Gray and Michael Johnson are developing at the moment. So what SCAF does is basically bringing people together, providing opportunity for these people to share their knowledge, their know-how, their ideas, through webinars, through meetings, and we also have vehicles to support research, and one of those is pump priming. So pump priming are small grants that offer teams a small amount of money, between £1,000 and £8,000, for projects for a duration of up to 6 months. And those projects are going to generate evidence that a collaboration is working, that it's not risky and it's attractive, and it's going to help the collaboration build and strengthen to kind of go on to greater and bigger things, supporting this exchange between discipline and sector, and also supporting the flow of people between institutions. So we're trying to think about all types of institutions in Scotland and supporting the people who work within them, including with specific focus on early career researchers, so people who are maybe earlier in their professional journey in food, who we want to retain in Scotland and we want to promote in many different ways. So our first round of pump priming awarded 6 projects from 10 applications. You can see here that those are the titles of the projects that were awarded, and the ones that we're hearing about tonight are 2 of those specifically. And those projects bring together 12 institutions, 18 researchers around topics that range from cheese from peas to traditional Japanese cuisine to beans. And the first one that we're going to hear about tonight is the Beans Project by Emily. So Emily, I think you're going to speak for about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and then we're going to open the floor to questions, and Rika is going to join along and answer some of the questions with you. So that's it for me. Very much looking forward to hear about the projects, and passing over to you.
So hello, my name is Dr. Emily May Armstrong, and today I'm talking about the wonderful Full of Beans project. And full disclosure, I'm battling a bit of a migraine at the moment, so I won't be able to stick around for the second half of this, unfortunately. But it's really brilliant to be here tonight to tell you all about this project. So I'm also joined by my fantastic colleague, Rika, who is the one who actually put the pump priming funding together. And that was done in order to hire me on as a public health campaign evaluator to see how well the project was run, if it achieved its aims, and what it was looking to do. So over the next 15-20 minutes or so, I will run you through what the Full of Beans campaign was, what it got up to, why it's important, who was involved, and the outcomes of the project as well as like the next steps. And at the end, Rika and I will discuss the pump priming application and what it allowed us to do and what our next steps are. So a little bit about me. I am actually a plant geneticist by PhD training, and I've always been really interested in food sovereignty, food security, and nurturing climate resilient food ecosystems in quite a local scale. So using my plant PhD knowledge, I now advise smaller food projects, smaller scale food sovereignty related projects like Glasgow Seed Library, for example, about food, about plants, and find myself doing lots of really cool research like this. So the title of today's talk is Creating and Evaluating a Glasgow-wide Campaign Encouraging Bean Consumption and Building Bean Knowledge by me, and I wouldn't be possible to have run any of this without Rika Gonzalez, Ada Garcia, and Helen Trail. So Rika works with the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, and Ada and Helen are based at the University of Glasgow. We were funded by SCAF, and also the Full of Beans project ran in collaboration with Food and Climate Action and Glasgow Community Food Network. So I will get started with a quick introduction as to why beans. So the Scottish diet is high in meat and processed foods and low in fibre and vegetables compared to the global average. The global food system is responsible for 30% of carbon emissions, and the majority of those are from animal agriculture. Beans provide a healthy, affordable, and climate-friendly source of protein and fibre. But there are innumerable barriers to bean consumption, and there's very little understanding of what these barriers are and how they might influence bean eating habits. And I think, in fact, Scotland or UK as the whole, I can't quite remember at the moment, actually has the lowest amount of bean consumption per capita everywhere. So we've got a big hill to climb to get people to eat more beans. So the Full of Beans campaign had a number of aims, and it achieved an awful lot in the sort of 9 months that it was running. So the campaign wanted to share information on the health and environmental benefits of eating beans, demonstrate how to grow and cook beans, encourage chefs to include more beans on their menus, create opportunities for people to get involve growers across the city to grow and save seeds. And where I come in was to evaluate this whole campaign to understand bean barriers, bean sentiment, and campaign experiences. So I will give a little bit of an introduction into what the campaign actually did, and then follow that up with a snapshot of the evaluation. So the Full of Beans campaign ran an awful lot of events. They had 10 campaign partners in different areas of the city, as well as 3 larger partners like Beans It's How, which is a global campaign, Bean Meals Oxford, which again, not based in Glasgow. But it was a very rich and integrated campaign in terms of who it was working with. We had 8 Beans on the Menu participants, and we'll hear a little bit from them later. And these are cafes, restaurants, eateries, colleges that put a bean meal on their menu for March 2024. And there were almost so many Full of Beans public and stakeholder events that I couldn't count them all, it felt like sometimes, but we were spread out really far across the city, all the way from Tollcross down to Darnley and up to Lamhill and Milton as well. So we weren't just concentrated right in the more affluent central parts of Glasgow. And we also had 20 stalls as well. So overall, there was a lot of engagement across the city. And something I also want to point out is that the Full of Beans campaign didn't receive any external funding to run. It was all run internally through the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership. So my funding was actually the largest chunk of money that we had for the campaign to actually figure out how well it had run. So I took a mixed methods evaluation approach to figure out just how well this campaign had run and any lessons that we could learn from it in the future. Come on, laptop. There we go. So I took a quantitative and qualitative approach, and I will focus on the quantitative just for now. So I looked at things like social media reach. GFFP, Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, has a fantastic social media communications officer, Talia, who is doing a lot of work to promote these events around Glasgow. I also looked at event attendance and also looked at a questionnaire, and I will look at the limitations of our questionnaire approach later on in the talk. So new to me as a quantitative geneticist was qualitative research. So this pump priming and the SCAF funding offered me a fantastic way to sort of diversify my research methods and use them in a very tangible way, because as a quantitative geneticist, molecular biologist, the work I was previously doing didn't feel like it had made real tangible change to people's lives. Whereas in this, it was really great to use these qualitative approaches to assess that and actually get a feeling like what we were doing was really making a difference. So we hosted 15 one-to-one semi-structured interviews, predominantly with stakeholders and people who had been involved in the Beans on the Menu challenge, people who worked within Scottish food landscape, but also members of the public as well. So I chatted to partner organisation members and event attendees, as I just said. And this was coded, analysed for sentiment, and the majority of the really juicy data was drawn out of the qualitative outcomes. So from this, like I'm just repeating myself now, we did coding, analysis, and key theme identification, semi-quantitative sentiment analysis. This was contributed to by the questionnaire as well. And I also looked at the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation to see who was in the room when we were talking about food and who was in the room when we were talking about bean access and bean awareness. I think class or indexes of multiple deprivation are often left out of food conversations. So this is something that I was really keen to bring in throughout the assessment and the evaluation of the campaign. Because of time, I've not got too much time to delve into all the different sorts of data that we collected. So I'll just focus on the big headlines, and then we can talk about the next steps for all of this data at the end of the talk. So I was hoping that this mixed methods evaluation approach would provide a comprehensive evaluation of our fantastic Full of Beans campaign. So we gathered a lot of data. It was quantitative and qualitative, as I said earlier. We only received 22 questionnaire responses, partly because of a massive delay in receiving ethics approval. We were waiting for 2 months out of the entire 6-month project to hear back from them there. And we also didn't incentivize questionnaire responses as much as we could have done. We also gathered data from the socials, reach and event attendance, and our 15 semi-structured interviews. From here, we had 26 different qualitative and quantitative factors contributing to the evaluation. We do have a report online that you can check through to see what these look like in a more accessible, digestible, public-facing way. And I'm sure Rika or Ada will be able to pop the link to that PDF in the chat at some point this evening. So I will focus on the 3 main aims of this evaluation, which was campaign impact and outcomes, bean awareness and consumption, and barriers to eating beans, specifically in Glasgow. So there is so much data that I could be sharing, but I'll try and keep it really top level, and we'll just look at a couple of examples to illustrate how well the Full of Beans campaign ran. So for campaign impact and outcomes, we had a total reach of 44,154 people engaging across all of these different platforms, which is, I can't tell you the population of Glasgow off the top of my head, but it's quite a significant amount. And total of 462 event attendees across talk and training sessions, workshops, education and stalls as well. So we had plenty of people engaging with the campaign. When asked to describe the campaign, people predominantly described it as informative, followed by engaging, enjoyable, interesting, fun. I think that's really important. A good campaign should be fun. Encouraging, holistic, delicious, community building, and exciting. And there's innovative as well. So this is what people thought of the campaign and how it might have impacted people long term. So 8 restaurants and cafes put beans on the menu. And chatting to one cafe owner, he said, by the end of the month, beans were a really popular ingredient in the bowl. We sold over 1,200 portions over 25 days. And again, I'm not especially quick at the maths here, but during our interview, he said that they were selling out of these butter beans daily. And they are now looking at, they now do incorporate more beans onto their menu on a day-to-day basis, which is brilliant. The University of Glasgow has now started incorporating beans into the James McCune Smith Learning Hub as well. There is one bean dish available on the menu every day at least. And this is the biggest student hub on campus. I can't quite remember the exact turnover of students, but they sell an awful lot of food every day. We also did some fantastic work with the school catering teams in Glasgow, who serve 37,000 students daily. And from here, they were able to incorporate three new bean meals onto the secondary school menus. And they were in the process of incorporating bean meals into primary school menus when I was running the evaluation. Most excitingly, the team who incorporated these beans on the menu actually won a really prestigious school food award for engaging with the campaign a few weeks ago, maybe even a few days ago. So I would call this a pretty big success because it was so recent. I didn't actually incorporate this into the report, but it really leaves a long-lasting legacy of just how important this campaign was. So campaign impact and outcomes, pretty impactful, I would say. So moving on to building bean awareness and consumption in Glasgow. 33% of people learned lots of new things about beans, and I wish that this was a higher amount, but these sorts of campaigns can sometimes preach to the already converted. I would consider myself knowing a lot about beans already, not even just because of this campaign, but 33% of all people who responded learned a lot and they really enjoyed it. 55% learned about how climate-friendly beans are, which I think is incredibly important as they're often left out of reflexive and responsive climate change-based conversations, especially when we think about sustainable food options. So we've got a little graph here. How often did you consume beans before attending a Full of Beans event? Some people less than once a month, but most people were already incorporating them a couple times a month, once a week, or most days. And when we say beans, we also meant legumes, pulses, hummus, baked beans. If it had a bean, legume, or pulse in it, we asked people to include it here. Afterwards, 5 out of our survey respondents said that they have added some beans to their diet after attending a Full of Beans event. 2 people, yes, lots of beans. Some people, who probably can't even incorporate any more beans into their diet, report that nothing has changed. Someone plans to, and someone says, no, not really. But the value of this data is that we're seeing real behavioral change compared to what they were doing before and what they'd like to do after engaging with the process. 72% said the campaign helped teach people about the nutritional benefits of beans, and 81% say the campaign has helped teach people about the climate benefit of growing and eating beans more and much more than before. And again, we did have a small sample size for the questionnaire, but these results are really encouraging. So I have a really lovely quote here from someone who works in Glasgow's food landscape, but attended as a member of the public. They work very closely with Cash First initiatives with regards to food in food banks and in areas with high levels of multiple deprivation. So the first thing they made after the event was for a community meal with King Kitchen, and it was a leek and butterbean and thyme dish that had been demonstrated at the workshop. It was so tasty, and we served it at a community meal at the Citizen Theatre, and everyone loved it. And I know as a fact that King Kitchen is still doing this bean dish, and it is requested very often at their open community meals as well. So finally, this is the part that I wish I could speak most about, but we're saving a lot of this for a paper. So you're getting the highlights at the moment before we really delve back into this data with a bit more time to put together a paper and a future funding proposal. So one of the biggest barriers to bean consumption was knowledge and time. It takes a lot of time to prepare beans, and you also need to know how to soak them, when to soak them, why to soak them in some cases. And this really came up again and again when speaking to the participants qualitatively. Food histories and food cultures also tied into this. People from Scotland would say, well, yeah, I would eat lentils in a lentil soup or in some Scotch broth mix, but not much more than that. Whereas people who were from much further afield were saying, well, yeah, I eat beans all the time. It's a critical part of my cultural staple meal, or a staple meal, sorry. So there was a big divide between cultures and histories between the different people we were speaking to. And exposure and access as well also played into this. If you're not exposed to it at a young age, you're not going to be engaging with it. You're not going to have that knowledge. And that is a result of, you know, food histories and cultures not playing into incorporating beans. Access was a massive issue as well. There are a lot of Glaswegians, again, I can't quite remember the number off the top of my head, who live in food deserts where you're much less likely to be able to access fresh produce or nutritious produce like canned beans, for example. And as I said, all of these feed into each other to create this sort of triad of bean barriers. Exposure and access can't be a barrier without differences in food histories and cultures, and that can't be a barrier without knowledge and time. So it all feeds into each other to create a real separation of who's really eating beans quite often to who isn't eating beans at all. People said that cooking from scratch can be time intensive and intimidating. Some people I spoke to said, if you're cooking beans from dry, they might be really cheap, but you might not have the money to turn on the gas or your cooker for hours to cook them. And canned might just be out of the way. You might not know what to do with them. As I said, beans aren't necessarily mainstream. According to one of our interviewees, beans are not integrated into Scottish cultural cuisine in the way that they might be in other cuisines. Equally, beans are not necessarily a sought after taste. They aren't high in sugar, high in salt. They don't have that super delicious umami tang that a lot of us are reaching for when we eat food. And they aren't always easy to access. So this was actually my favorite part of the project, to really get into the nitty-gritty and start to knit together why specifically in Glasgow we aren't engaging with beans in a meaningful way. So the campaign had lots of fantastic successes. More people used a fantastic communications toolkit than the Get Involved toolkit, but many plan to use both. So we put together a communications toolkit to sort of spread the ideas, spread the word, and also a toolkit onto how to run your own Full of Beans related events as well. Most attendees considered themselves adventurous or not picky eaters. So it'd be quite interesting to see someone who would consider themselves a picky eater and how they'd respond. The main barriers to eating beans are taste, digestion, cultural exposure, preparation time, and bean knowledge as well. Most respondents already ate beans and knew their benefits, but fewer knew about their climate impact. Many added beans to their diet after attending an event, but many found dried beans inconvenient. So people were really reaching for canned beans or prepared bean products as well. Most attended an event to learn more because it aligned with their interests. So this means that while we had loads of people attending, it might have been people that were already engaged with the Scottish cultural food landscape. Attendees described our events as interesting, enjoyable, engaging, and informative. And for continued success, we require more funding, a dedicated project manager, which again comes with more funding, and long-term longitudinal impact monitoring. And we'll talk about our next steps after with Rika. There are lots of lovely things happening at the moment. And future recommendations include cultural exchange opportunities where we can bring together people who beans make up a staple part of their cultural cuisine, do recipe exchanges, do meal exchanges to really build that network of exposure, access, and recipes as well. Improving recipe collections to be more relevant to some people. We were using recipes from the Beans' How, Bean Meals Oxford, to promote this, but we had some participants who thought they could have done it a bit better, so it'd be great to expand that. More co-created community sessions, so the people who are most interested or people who are maybe living in areas that are food deserts can come together and say, right, I want to get people eating more beans. How can we do that? And we'll work with you. People really enjoyed the hands-on experiences. So that looks like the cooking classes, the bean support willow weaving classes, bean growing classes, all of these things, which are fantastic, but also require a lot of dedicated time and support to run. Additional support could have been provided for bean growers. 2024 was a terrible, terrible year for growing food in Glasgow. There was a lot of fungal rust in the beans and so much rain and so many slugs. So trying to create an environment where people can really grow beans from scratch, the weather had other ideas. And we also had some recommendations for diversified communication and to use different modes of communication beyond our typical Instagrams, LinkedIn's, Facebooks, and emails. So I would like to say thank you all so much for your time. I know this has been a real whistle-stop tour of all the possible things that the Beans project has done. I'd like to say thank you all so much, especially to SCAF for funding this and the University of Glasgow for where I work. And here is a lovely list of different people that we've all partnered with throughout to make this project a success. And I'd like to thank you all for your time. And I'm now really happy to open any questions. But first, I might pass to Rika to see if she's able to sort of fill us in on what the next steps are.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Emily. It's yes, I have to mirror Emily in thanking SCAF for this amazing funding. And it was amazing to actually find a researcher with the research skills, but also the same passion for beans as our team shared. So as next steps, we worked with the Glasgow Community Food Work to deliver the campaign with their Food and Climate Action project. They have activators in 5 different areas of the city. And Jenny, who was part of our team, is already hoping to incorporate some of the learnings from Emily's report into her future work. So she's hoping to work with improving engagement in multicultural communities in Glasgow and take advantage of their cultural learning and bean skills. And there might be another bean book coming as a result of that as well. Also, we've already met with the research team, with Ada, Emily, and Helen to discuss potential future research. Funding is still, very much to be confirmed. But if it's successful, Emily can continue on this work with Ada and Helen to find out more about the long-term effects of the campaign. We also, if that goes ahead, we will also hope to invite all our previous stakeholders and some other stakeholders that have come forward from around the UK, hoping to work with us. So what's this space?
Great to listen to Emily's presentation. I think that's a great work that was done on that. And I'm pleased to share our own pump priming project funded by SCAF. The topic is on the food system resilience, public sector local food procurement. This particular project is a multidisciplinary collaborative effort led by IntelliDigest, funded by Scottish Alliance for Food. And we collaborated with University of Edinburgh, Professor Millie Brennan, Queen Margaret University, as well as Glasgow Caledonian University, Bahara Masuri, and we also worked with Nourish Scotland, Pete, and as part of the project, we engaged with 5 councils as well as also Edinburgh Council. So the Good Food Nation means that Scotland has set a vision for Scotland to be good food nation where people from every walk of life take pride and pleasure in and benefit from the food they produce, buy, cook, serve, and eat each day. So what the Good Food Nation Act has done is to provide the legislative framework that enables us to take steps towards realizing our vision of a good food nation. Now, according to the Scottish Government Procurement Activities report for 2021-2022, total of over 88 million was invested in food services, accommodation and food services, while over 50 million was invested by the Scottish Government on agriculture, forestry, and fishing. So it tells you how important the public sector procurement is with regards to the agri-food sector and also the food system in its entirety. And for what we need to look at is where we want to be within the food system, building on the Good Food Nation Act. And this is tied into what we're trying to achieve through the project, the pump priming project we did. So understanding that introduction of free school meals presents a key step in Scotland's journey of becoming a good food nation. And how can we leverage public sector procurement to ensure that we can improve access to good food to a lot more people. And this is through ensuring that we can raise wider awareness around meal planning, increase engagement in long-term educated planning of meals in schools, food systems for improved local food procurement, supporting local food producers to plan and adopt more sustainable practices in food production for improved health and environmental restoration, and supporting councils to plan and commit to local food production and procurement, thereby increasing economic activities within the food system, as well as accelerating access to good food for more people. So how did we structure this project? We try to ensure that we partner with schools, as well as also work with farms in the process. In the first section of the consumption part, so we put into consumption and then production side. In terms of consumption side, we looked into surveys covering pupils, parents, and guidance, and then teachers. We also did some networking sessions, raising awareness about nutrition, and also we looked at how those engagements has really yielded value. But in terms of the production side, what we did plan for the project was looking into reviewing existing database on where do we produce different food items, trying to map out local farms to schools, and also engaging with farmers to help them understand how they can be part of this local food procurement system. I'm conscious of the fact that I really want to take a lot of questions from attendees as much as possible, so I'll kind of quickly go through some of the results. So in terms of the pupil engagement, most of the engagement we had at the end of the day within the production, the consumption side, so with pupils and guardians and teachers, as well as also parents, was mostly done within the Edinburgh City Council. We had some challenges trying to also deliver the project in 5 within the time frame that we had. So unfortunately, we stayed with Edinburgh Council, and out of the wider engagement we had, we were able to receive survey from 18 different pupils, and this cuts across primary and high school. And when we asked questions around excuse me. So we asked questions around their perception of healthy food. One of the key things that came across is, is something that has to do with balanced lifestyle, gives your body a nutritional boost for longer, and providing you healthy. So these are quite some terms the students were sharing with us, which means that they have some fair understanding of what it is in terms of healthy food. And in terms of school meal, some of them dislike school meals, some of them don't take school meal because of allergy issues, and some of them think the food is good and tasty, and for some, the mom thinks it's free and they just need to eat it. And when we looked into frequency of consumption of food, we realized that most participants could not differentiate between meat and fiber, so they could not differentiate those food items in terms of its recommendation by professionals on what they need to eat. And most of that occurred within meat and fiber. So it means there's, and we consider also in some of the other aspects where we're looking at which of these food will be considered a starchy foods. Some of the participants only at 8.9% were able to correctly identify the foods, which means there's a gap in knowledge, nutritional knowledge. And this also ties in with the recent report by on the dietary intake in Scotland's children, where we can see that there is really most children don't meet the nutritional consumption that they need to achieve, and there is need so that particular report is showing that most children, they do not meet nutritional requirement. But from what we're seeing here, it means that there's a gap in terms of nutritional knowledge. So there might be need for more awareness, more knowledge sharing around food and its nutritional value to help in making informed decisions. In this case, where we're looking at high or low fat food, no participant identify all foods which are good source of fat. As you can see here, there's 0 points for that. So they identify some, but not all. So there wasn't any participant who could identify all. Only 16% of respondents got one correct answer when they were asked which type of fats do health professionals recommend to reduce. When they were asked which foods are a good source of protein, only 22% of participants were able to identify all food items that will be classed as a source of protein. When the participants were asked which foods are typically high in added sugars, so most of them were able to identify some of them, but for diet, fizzy, pop drinks, natural yogurts, they were incorrectly identified as appeared in the graph. So 3.3% and 11% of the respondents. And when we were asked what is recommended intake of oily fish per week, only 55.6% of participants incorrectly selected 2 servings as the recommended intake of oily fish, which means that some of the participants couldn't really understand that 1 serving is enough to meet their dietary nutrient requirement. And frequency of consumption of nuts, we can see there's quite a variety in terms of how frequently people consume nut. I know that a lot of this is also anchored on nut allergies, but it's important to see how that varies in people's diet. We talked about beans now. Looking at the legume consumption, we can also see there's quite a variation in terms of frequency of consumption of legumes. And regards to frequency of consumption of fruits and vegetables, depending on the type of fruits, we can also see a variety of differences in how frequently people take the fruits. Some of them are tied to parents also being able to support their children in the process, and how frequently they also get to engage with this kind of fruits on a daily basis. So frequency of consumption of bread types, that also is also showing us some pattern here on what kind of bread people are eating more and what they're eating less. And I think we can see from here that some of the breads that they eat up to 1 to 2 times a day are mostly found in some of them wholemeal, some of them white bread. But it's good that in terms of this particular area in Edinburgh, there's a lot of interest in wholemeal bread, and I think it also boils down to parental awareness and knowledge. So, and yeah, frequency of consumption of drink types. There's quite from the data is showing that there's high consumption of water and low consumption of fizzy drink, although we can also see that based on the dish report, the consumption of energy drink varies depending on the age. So we've not really separated age here, but we can see there is some level of consumption of energy drinks anyway, but mostly there's a very high consumption of water here. So in terms of parent engagement, we did have quite a good response from parents. At least we had over 73 parents engaged with our survey. Most of the parents are quite diverse community, and most of the parents are quite learned in terms of the educational level. When we looked at healthy food, it was clear that parents understand what it means to eat a healthy diet, high nutritional value, not ultra processed, plant focused, but not solely plant-based, being physically and mentally well through a good lifestyle and diet, nutritional balanced meals, low sugar, low saturated fat. So you can see the real words there coming through. Your body and mind being looked after and maintained in optimal condition. So these are specific comments from parents. Foods that provide nutrients to keep us healthy and reduce risk. So in terms of the frequency of consumption of food, it's quite similar, not exactly with the pupil, but it's quite similar with the parents. And obviously, parents do also transfer knowledge to their children. It's not exactly, but there was a similar pattern in that result. So I wouldn't go through all the same survey we did for children, we did it for parents in terms of consumption, but I won't go through all the data. I decided to just leave it out because of run through the pupil survey. So one of the key things we also did with the parents is looking at meal planning. So we didn't do that with children. So we wanted to know what meal planning means for parents. We wanted to know how often they go shopping. And we can see that most parents do shop weekly. And for most parents, the household cost for meals is about £85 every week just to buy grocery. And they mostly purchase their grocery from supermarkets. And in terms of whether they plan what they eat, some often plan, a few. And when we looked at those that rarely plan, what drives them, what is the reason why they rarely plan? Some of them say, I don't usually have time or energy to spend a lot of time at the weekend planning my food for the following week. Mainly comes down to finding all the time to organize before I do the weekly shop. Often buy reduced produce to save money. No time to buy what's on special. No time buy what's on special yellow, reduced price tickets. So some people it's kind of driven by cost. Some is driven by not having the time. And for some people, they just decide on the day, get to do it as it goes. For those who do plan, it's really good to see the difference. They want to ensure it's all healthy as it can be, make sure they have the correct ingredients and save money because they believe that planning and buying ahead really helps them to save money. It helps them to shop within a budget, to be organized as children have clubs in the evening, so need quick dinners, to not waste food or money, to save time and decision making through the week, and to avoid waste and plan better choices rather than relying on ultra processed foods. And they don't want to waste food. So you can see there are different drivers for different parents, and it all comes to awareness and knowledge. We try to look at what factors they consider when purchasing food items for their family. So that the most selected response was family likes and dislikes. So what the family like and what they dislike, maybe allergy issues, that drives them. So that's the most significant one. Cost was next one, and nutritional value. So I think some of these parents are quite aware of the importance of nutrition. Over 95% of parents prepare their food at home. We try to look at, what percentage prepare their food at home or what percentage buy out. For some people, they've got the opinion that a lot of parents love to buy food out, but I think in this particular community, a lot of people really want to prepare their meal. So in terms of lunch choice of school, we can see that less than 50% of respondents use school meal, and level of agreement with confidence and importance when meal planning. So we try to look at how they think about different factors, and we ask the question whether it's important for them to plan family meals before going for food shopping. And we can see that, green is like, yes, very, we strongly agree, and agree, somewhat agree, neither agree nor disagree, somewhat disagree, and strongly disagree for red. So it gives you an idea of where people sit in terms of, and also the bar will show you what number of people really agreeing or disagreeing for each of the opinions. So we looked at whether they're confident that they can prepare their meals before going for food shopping. Quite a high number of people who were positive about that. For a community where 95% actually prepare their meal is quite obvious. It's important for me that I can prepare and cook a healthy, balanced meal at home for my family. Exactly. It's very much aligns with that. It's also, I feel confident that I can prepare and cook a healthy meal at home. Yep. So for this community, preparing meal at home is not really a problem. They love to do that. They think about portion sizes. And we looked at what kind of foods they eat at home. So these are the numbers that popped up, mostly from parent and pupil. And yeah, in terms of lunchbox food items, those are the numbers that popped out. So we looked at teacher engagement. So we did look at meals and you know, what meals people are presented in the school and the difference in terms of nutrient composition. I will also share the link to this slides and also the reports, so anyone that attended the webinar will have access to it. We looked at differences in terms of nutritional composition for both councils that we work with, and we came back to the procurement side, looked at the price differences in terms of what the food items goes on the shelf and what the council procurement cost is. And you know, there are opportunities here to look at those procurement costs and see how that also ties in with when we decide to opt for local food procurement and how that can be connected. We looked at farm engagement and, you know, what are the data in terms of where food is currently produced and also the distribution across the two councils we worked in. We looked at different kind of farming systems and what kind of food is produced in the different locations. We did set up a map trying to map the schools with the local councils. We did it on this particular platform. I'm going to put a link in the chat for everyone to see. So if you go to this platform and you sign up to the platform and go to under the environment section, go to the public procurement, you'll be able to see the map here. So we're able to get some data, publicly available data on different schools across the UK, but we focus on the farms in Fife and Edinburgh. And we try to map that so you can actually interact with the map if you go to the platform. So finally, the recommendation, what I'm recommending, there is a need to improve the food system. There's a need for the public sector procurement to drive change across the food system. We've set up, we've kind of created the Food Security Fund as a means to be able to deliver that. The public sector can drive sustainable local food production, and also we can work with households through food meal planning to be able to make contributions to Food Security Fund. What this does is that it helps the government understand points within, you know, where there are, you know, key demand to support people who are not able to meet the key nutrient requirement that help to ensure the dietary nutrient requirement of these individuals are met. Where the budget, especially looking at the broken plate report, where for most households they spend over 70% of their income on food. How can government mitigate that? And we currently have a project we've put together as a Food Security Fund project with EIT Food, and we are working with different stakeholders to see how the Food Security Fund could help drive change across the food system. We've set up the different mapping in terms of who is needed and what could be done to make that possible. I can talk about this in more details. And also you can read it up in the report.
We're going to close in about 1 minute. I think Laura has got a final slide showing some of the events that are coming up and opportunities. Our next get-together is on the 1st of April. We've got an online networking event. And on the 24th of April, we're in person in the University of Edinburgh and also have an interesting webinar coming up. And otherwise, we've got opportunity for people who want to write to join a residential writing retreat. If you've not been to one before, it's good fun, gets you to write in peace with nice scenery around you and hopefully provides a lovely environment to think about your writing and also speak to people who are also there to write.